Absolutely nothing beats windshield time. Welcome back to Dan the Road Trip Guy, a podcast where we have candid conversations about life lessons learned on the road. I'm your host, Bimmer enthusiast and road trip extraordinaire, Dan Neal. And now, on to the show. To say I'm excited today for the show would be an understatement. I have a young man joining me. He's a rising star in IndyCar racing. I've been following him since 2017 when he started on the road to Indy in pro-Mazda. He's now on the last rung of that racing ladder, and we expect to see him in IndyCars next year. I welcome to the show Stingray Rob. So, Stingray, most of my guests don't understand this first start. I say, we're going to take a warm-up lap around Mid-Ohio. I know you'll be very good at this. Who is Stingray Rob?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on the show. I'm going to go quickly here. But Stingray Rob, well, he is an Idaho boy, born and raised. I grew up around parents that loved cars. From an early age, I was attending Corvette clubs, drag races, autocross events. I actually took my first steps at a Corvette club meeting. Thus the name Stingray. My parents were big Corvette fans, and they decided to pass that passion along to me through my name. But I started racing when I was 5 years old. Ever since then, I just started climbing the ladder. I mean, one of the funny stories that I like to tell is that whenever I was in the car with my mom, and they had a Corvette at the time when I was quite little, she got on the throttle a little bit. All I could say was faster, faster, faster. It was pretty cool. But anyways, yeah, I ended up getting into racing pretty early and moved my way up through the karting ranks and then into cars. And then I tried everything. I did dirt cars, NASCAR, open wheel, sports cars. And I just wanted to make sure that whatever path it was that I was going to take was the one I wanted to do. So I just did it all. And one of the blessings that I've had along the way is the involvement of my family. They've been huge supporters of what I'm doing and who I am from day one. And that's not just my parents, that's my grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins and nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters. I mean, I got a large family, a wide variety of personalities, and they've all become part of my career, which is so cool because it makes it so much more meaningful for me. And not only that, but like my faith is something that I believe in. And that has been something that's passed along from my grandparents into my parents into me. That's why I feel like I am where I am, is to, share my faith with others and be a light to those around me. And I just feel like racing is that platform, and it's something that I'm passionate about and really enjoy.
You answered one of my first questions, and I'm sure you get asked that a lot, is your name. Very unique name, Stingray, particularly in racing.
So, yeah, and I can actually go in more in depth on that if you want.
I'd love it.
Full story.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah? Okay. Like I said, parents were big Corvette fans. My dad has a 1966 Stingray Corvette that he turned into a drag car, and it's a piece of work for sure. Like, it is a beautiful car. It looks mostly original, and you wouldn't be able to tell it has 800 horsepower from the outside, but it is something that is quite inspiring to see. But outside of the Corvette side of things, Sting is actually short for Sterling, and that is because of my dad's heritage. His side of the family is from Stirlingshire, Scotland, so they took Sterling, shortened it to Sting. And then both my grandpas had Ray in their name. My dad's dad was Ray, and then my mom's dad was Philip Ray. And so we took all of that, combined it together, and here I am as Stingray Rob.
The perfect racing name, right?
It doesn't get much better. It worked out well. It makes it hard to order a Subway sandwich, I'll admit, but it's all right.
Yeah, for sure. Because I've always been curious. It was like, I'd really like to know the details behind that. You mentioned your dad was into drag racing. So does your family have racing heritage then? Other racers, or are you the start of this?
No. I am the first of hopefully a few. That would be pretty cool. Leave a legacy of race car drivers. But my dad was kind of the first one, I think, that was into cars. He actually was restoring Corvettes for a while. I mean, in his day, it was, put a motor in whatever car you want to go fast, whether it be a beat up old truck or something else. But my mom was also a car person. She is quite the unique personality. She's very versatile, and she likes projects. She likes old cars, and she likes going fast. She likes the sound and driving and just the whole atmosphere. And it's pretty cool to see because I'm kind of their way of experiencing more in depth of that, right? They share the passion with me, but I'm the first generation racer out of the group.
Very cool. Yeah, I think a lot of us sometimes we're living out our lives through our kids, right? I kind of do that through Henry, who you know, and so I'm always like, whenever I catch a picture of him standing on pit lane somewhere, I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm not a great race car driver. I love to drive, but anyway, that's very cool. First race, you remember that very first race where you went out and you were competitive, and tell us about that.
Well, I started driving a go-kart in our driveway, and I remember that pretty vividly, actually. My dad would set up cones in the driveway. We had our own little cul-de-sac. I would rip around in my go-kart, and he'd say, "All right, I'm gonna put an apple up here. You got to hit the apple, and that'd be my apex point."
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I got started doing that, and then we went out to our local kart track, which is by no means something to brag about. It's 8th mile ripper of a track, super bumpy. You hold your breath for you know 15 seconds, and take a breath on the straightaway, and then you hold it for another 15 seconds. So I got going out there when I was 5 or 6. I guess my birthday was, I turned 5 in September, and then we didn't get out there till that next summer. And I don't really remember my first race, but I definitely remember the early stages of like, okay, where do you put your hands on the steering wheel? Like, okay, how close can I get to the cart next to me? And a 5-year-old is pretty young. Yeah, I remember some of it. And I think my first uh, large memory of like a successful race didn't come until I was about 8 years or 9 years old. 8 years old. It was 2010, and I won the 4-cycle Grand Nationals. That was a big event for me, and I actually made a last lap pass with 2 turns to go. And my mom's got a video of it somewhere, but she was filming, and you see me throw it in the corner that people don't normally pass in, and she ended up screaming and like dropping the camera, and I crossed the start and finish line, and finished first, and that was pretty cool. And my mom and grandpa and my dad were my mechanics at the time, so they got to end up on the podium with me, and that was like the big deal. It's like the first national event that I won, so that was pretty awesome.
Yeah. What track was that at? Do you remember?
That was in Tri-Cities, Washington.
Okay. Kind of mid Ohio last turn pass a few weeks ago, right? That was a nice pass.
Yes, it was very similar to that, actually. I think I got a little bit of my 8-year-old self out in that race.
Yeah, that looked good. Talk about street cars. We'll get away from the race car for a minute. First, first car that that was the family would have said is your car, and maybe you haven't had that yet. I don't know.
No, I've had my fair share of cars already. You can't keep the cars away from the car guy.
That's right.
So I kind of had two first cars, if I'm honest. We got I think it was like an '05 Mini Cooper S. I got that when I was like, oh, I don't know, 13 maybe, because I needed to learn how to drive a manual in order to go to the Bondurant Racing School in Arizona.
Okay.
And so my mom would take me out in parking lots at various locations, and we changed up our location so we weren't getting the cops pulling us over. But so I learned a manual at 13, and then we ended up selling that before I could drive. In Idaho, you can get your license or your permit, I guess, at 14 and a half, and then your license at 15. So I kind of went like a year without a car, got another Mini Cooper S, and it was race red. I don't know the exact name of the color, but bright red Mini Cooper, and has a supercharger and short wheelbase. And I ended up autocrossing that a couple of times, and then pretty soon, I live in a small town actually, so Payette, Idaho. The population is less than 7,000 probably most of the year,
Okay.
and our local police department had officers that were coaches on our basketball team. And so my two coaches, the head coach for my freshman year, my assistant coach, were police officers, and they'd see me ripping around town. Instead of pulling me over, they would say, "Hey, you're running suicides tonight." And so I'd have to do the extra workouts after practice because I got caught speeding through town. And so that Mini Cooper had to go pretty quickly. But yeah, those are my two first cars.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, those cops today probably, if they're still there, they're like, yeah, we used to chase Stingray around, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think they probably wouldn't admit it, but I don't know if they would have been able to catch up to me the way I was driving, but they knew that they'd catch me at practice. So
Yeah. There you go.
I paid for it there.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a family grocery store, and I had motorcycles, and people would go in the store and go, "Hey, Wilma was my mom's name. Wilma, your boy. you gotta take care of him.
That's funny.
Small town living.
Yeah, keeps you accountable.
Yeah, for sure. Lots of people are watching.
Yes.
This is a road trip show, and as I told you before we started, I love road trips, and I've driven across the country. My wife and I drove out through your part of the world. We did a 4,300-mile road trip in 2019.
Oh, wow.
We did a lap. Every road trip to me has to look like a lap. Drove from Denver, came through your state, went to Glacier, went to the West Coast, went to Glacier.
Beautiful.
Down to Tetons, back to Denver. Yeah, I mean, it's still probably one of the things that sticks out in our mind. So tell me, you're still young, most memorable road trip that you remember? Small child, recently?
Well, I can tell you I've had my fair share of road trips. When we were karting, about the time I was 12 years old, we were gone 42 weekends a year on the road. And we were driving to most of those races. And that was California, Arizona, Canada, Florida, North Carolina. And it was me and my dad a lot of the times, but my grandparents would also drive. But one of the most fun trips I think I had, and like I said, I've been on plenty, so it's just the one that stands out amongst the rest. But in 2017, it was my first year in pro-Mazda. We had a race in St. Louis, and my mom and my dad had to go back, and we actually owned a small grocery store in Ontario, Oregon. And so they had to go back and run the company for a little bit. But we were going to Watkins Glen right after St. Louis. It was like the following weekend. So my grandparents and I hopped in the rental car and drove from St. Louis to Watkins Glen, New York. And our goal was to do it without Google Maps or anything like that, just paper map.
Sure.
And so we did all the touristy things. We did the Louisville Slugger Factory. We did Antietam, Gettysburg, and somewhere along the way there, we were going to go to the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon. We're like, oh, that sounds awesome. That looks really cool. I remember I was in charge of the map. And so 15-year-old me, who's never used a map before, is obviously not the best option, but they were training me, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'd done it in school a little bit just for fun, and it's something that you kind of learn but don't ever use. So I was figuring it out as we went. But we look on the map, like, okay, this is the town that we're in, and you do like the little measuring tool. It's 50 miles up, and like, okay, and then that's like to the side. So we gotta go from this town to this town. So you follow the road signs, and so we're driving for like 30 minutes. I'm like, man, where is this Pennsylvania Grand Canyon? We're looking around, and we get to the town on the other side. We're like, what in the world? Where'd the Grand Canyon go? We turn around and go back through on this road that's supposed to be, right next to the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon, and we can't find it. It's like, okay, it's the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon. Like, it's on the map. You should be able to notice what it is. And so we get back to the town on the other side, like where we started, and we did that again. And pretty soon, we get back, and we're heading back towards our starting positions for the second time. And I realized, I'm like, wait, no, hang on. We are in the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon right now. And it was like 2 rolling hills and the road running between them. And that was like our entertainment for the day. Halfway through that event, I started eating all the snacks in the car, and they're like, hang on, we got to survive here. I'm like, I know, I'm eating it before you guys eat it. I got to put on the pounds before you guys come along.
Yeah.
So anyways, it was a good trip, and, seeing all the sights. And Gettysburg was awesome too, because I was actually studying that in my history class at the same time. So I'm doing homework in the car in the back seat as we're going through Gettysburg, and I'm studying it in my book and reading about it, and I'm telling them facts about this place and this place and this place, and so is here. And then, it was so cool to experience that with my grandparents, just the 3 of us, without my parents or someone else being there. And it was a lot of good personal time and good for our relationship.
Nothing like traveling with your grandparent. I only grew up with one grandparent, Grandma. She was quite the kind of Renaissance woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, people need to embrace a paper map every now and then. This whole GPS thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I usually set mine on avoid highways and avoid tolls. And people be like, why are you doing that? I said, well, because you can't see America if you just stay on the interstate.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did a cross-country road trip with my dad in 2003. I bought an old BMW with only one purpose. It was in San Jose. We flew out there. We live in Cincinnati. And we flew out there, and my dad was an owner-operator of big rigs. So, I'm thinking, perfect companion on this trip. He was 73 at the time, but we pick up this car, and we head out. We had no map. So we're kind of like, I'm thinking, well, I got a truck driver with me. He figure out where we're going, and the goal was to run Route 50 from the West Coast back home. We did get turned around once. We actually had to stop and buy a paper map. Been racing, let's just call it 2017 to now, and you're doing great, by the way. I mean, I enjoy watching what you do. And so you've been in these races. We'll talk about pro-Mazda. We'll talk about Indy Light. And is there just one race that just really stands out to you among the rest? And I know there's been a lot. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think. Well, I was in the road to Indy for quite a while before I got my first win. I was 49 races in before I got that first W. And so that came in 2020 at Mid-Ohio. I remember I was sitting okay in the championship. That was like kind of my make it or break it year in 2020. And so I was going for the championship way more than I probably would have otherwise, because I knew that this is kind of like it if I don't win. It's a triple header weekend. We did the first race, and I started like third or something and then finished 10th. And it was no one's fault other than my own. I drove off the track and then put myself in bad positions, and it was just terrible. And after that race, I remember I get out of the car and look at my driver coach, and he kind of shrugged his shoulders, and I was like, I don't want to talk to anyone right now. So I said, okay, I'm going to be back. So I put my helmet in the trailer and go for a walk around Mid-Ohio. And I don't know if you've been out in the little fields out there where the campgrounds are, but I just went for a walk through the trees.
I've camped there many times.
I was like, okay, so you probably know right where I was.
We used to camp there with Henry when he was like 4 years old. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, we're familiar with that.
Yeah, so I took myself on a little tour out there. I ended up taking a knee, leaning on a fence. And I was like, all right, God, this is it. Like, I have given everything that I've got for as long as I can remember. This has been my biggest passion, and it's either I mess up, something happens that doesn't go our way, someone else makes a mistake, or I make a mistake, and it just like it never works out the way we need it to work out. And I'm tired of trying to force it, so I'm just trusting you with it. And in that moment, I had a memory of a verse that I learned when I was homeschooled, and it was James 1, and it said, "Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. So let perseverance finish its work, so you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." I was like, like that is not something that I've thought about in a long time, but it was like this flood of emotions went away, and I felt at peace because I knew that everything that I'd been through had been for a reason, and I could trust God with everything that I'd struggled through and all the lessons that I learned, and I could consider it something that was a blessing because it taught me something that I wouldn't have experienced otherwise. I was good after that. Like I thought, all right, whatever happens, happens. I'm trusting God, and I know that it'll be for a reason. It'll be for a reason as long as I give it to Him. I went out for the next race, and I ended up winning. And it was just like the weight kind of just was lifted. And from there on, it was just like the floodgates opened up. So, yeah, that's probably one of the most memorable races I've had, and one that I think will be a staple in my career just because it was the moment that I kind of gave it up and leaned on my faith more than I would have had I not been broken. So I think it's good for a man to be broken, not broke. If that makes sense. A truly broken man is at rock bottom and is willing to give it all away in order to get back up. And that's where I was. Yeah. I wasn't, halfway there. I was all the way there. I was ready to do it. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. You're 20 years old. What's one thing you'd like to experience in this lifetime? Let's put racing aside, okay? We'll put winning the Indy 500 aside, okay?
Okay.
We're going to do a little more life stuff here. There's just that one thing that, I don't know, maybe as a kid, you're like, someday I'm going to do that. We know you're going to win the Indy 500, okay? I'm confident of that.
Yeah.
Anything that pops to your mind, and again, maybe as 20, you don't think about that too much. When you get older, you start to go, okay, it's getting closer to the finish line, so I better figure this out.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. Like, what was the thing as a kid? Like, I'm going to do that. And it's kind of funny. Like, as a kid, I was even asking questions. As a 7th grader, maybe I was asking the question of like, okay, what's the purpose of living? Like, this is absolutely useless. Like, why do we have to go to school? Why do we have to learn? Why can't we just be born with it? This is ridiculous. I'm tired of it already. And so, those were questions that I was thinking at a very early age. And it was kind of funny too, because before that, I thought that I was just going to do everything. I was going to be a race car driver. I was going to be an astronaut. I was going to be a baker. I was going to be a dog trainer. It was just like this list of things that continued on. Oh, I have so much life ahead of me. And I think that's so true. Like at 8 or 9 years old, you think that you're on top of the world because the world sits in front of you. That's like the age that you realize that, man, I have so much ahead of me. And as long as I keep doing something, I'm going to do it all. And I didn't realize that we don't actually have that much time. So
exactly.
I think if I was going to make a list of things that I want to experience, like I think it'd be super cool to do. So actually growing up in Idaho, I'm a big outdoorsman. I like snow skiing. I like mountain biking. I like hiking. I like hunting. But I want to do like an all-out trip, like a 3-week trip up the coast of California, do like surfing, rock climbing, and then go into Oregon, Washington, Idaho, up into Canada, and like just do anything from like surfing, hunting, fishing, hiking, and then snow skiing into British Columbia, and like do it out of the back of my car or a van or something. Meet people along the way and just like have good company as I go to different places. I think that would be absolutely amazing to do something like that. I mean, and then outside of that, if you're going to get away from activities, I don't know, it's hard to say. I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but life is quite short, and as one person, you don't feel like you can do a lot, but I feel like racing's a platform I can use. So I want to make a difference in communities around me and the lives around me. And so like, that's one of my main goals in life, is just to look for those opportunities. And hopefully one day I don't care if I'm remembered as that, but I want to inspire others to do the same.
Because sometimes, people get famous and they kind of forget that. I'll challenge you on that. Always remember that statement. And it'll be on a podcast forever. I'm sure this will never go away.
Yeah. Once it's on the internet, it's there forever.
If you could go on a road trip with anyone,
oh man,
who would you want to go with?
Man, that would be tough, just because I would want a versatile group. You want the guy that is the spontaneous, don't think, just go wherever, do whatever kind of a guy.
Yeah.
And then you'd want someone that was very thoughtful and like the planner. And I would,
I think that's a good description though, Stingray. I think that's a great description. It doesn't have to be a particular person, but you know who you want in the car with you. Hey, you should also say the guy with the credit card, right? We need the guy with the...
Yes. That is a good guy to have in the car with you.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about advice for young aspiring drivers. I think I'm going to skip that. I'm going to ask you what advice you would give to young people. I'm sure you got great encouragement and advice from people. What would you tell somebody if you had to sit down with them? Stingray Rob sitting down with a young person, they've got a passion. I don't care what the passion is. What would you tell them?
I am learning a lot as I go along. I would probably just give my most recent lessons.
There you go.
But one of them, I think, that I would definitely tell someone is just build a community. And I think that we all learned that through COVID, is like how important community is. And that doesn't mean like your social media community. I mean like really interconnected, deep, hold you accountable, living life together kind of community. That could be family, it could not be family. But I think that it's important to have wise counsel around, people that are going to call you out, people that are going to challenge you, and also the people that are going to have fun with you and be willing to go through the daily life and the monotonous as well as the good, the bad, and the ugly kind of a deal. But yeah, I think that pour into relationships where you know that you can have that, more so than getting caught up in how many friends can I have. That is something that I'd really advise, because the group that you spend your most time with is the group that you're going to become, and you're all going to grow together. And so make sure that you're growing with the right people instead of all the people. So yeah, there's that. And then another thing I'd say is that, recently I read Ecclesiastes, and it's almost depressing to read, but it is very eye-opening to the idea that, everything that we do is going to go away at some point, right? Everything fades over time.
Yep.
So make sure that what you're doing is not just for the moment, but is also valuable in the future. And that's like how you spend your money, how you spend your time, how you spend your energy, how you spend your thoughts, and make sure that what you're pouring into and what you're pouring into yourself is valuable and you're going to see the return out of. And that also goes into your passions. Like, don't get caught up in doing everything all at once. that was something I had to learn with racing. Is when I was growing up, I was playing a bunch of sports, baseball, basketball, soccer, golf, snow skiing, all that. And those were all things that I really enjoyed. And I got caught up every once in a while of like, well, should I just quit racing and be a basketball player? Like, I need to do it all. And I think that if you just enjoy it for what it is, take what you can from it and give everything that you can 100%, but don't get caught up in doing everything all at once. There's a balance there. And so I guess learning the balance is tricky and easier said than done. But yeah, I think that's a good thing to learn, as well as, career and life. Like there's so many things outside of racing for me, and there's a lot of things I want to achieve outside of racing, and balancing those also helps me inside of my career. You're only as good as you are balanced. Those are the probably 3 or 4 lessons that I would pass on to someone.
Wow. Those are great. I mean, we paused when we did that question a little bit, but I think the answer you gave is what young people need to hear. Wrapping up here, Stingray Rob, tell my listeners how to find you, because I have a lot of non-racer friends. I drug one of them off to the 500 this year, and he had a great time. We've taken some to the Texas Speedway, trying to introduce racing to some of my non-racer friends.
That's awesome.
Tell my friends and my listeners how to find you so they can follow you.
Yeah, so Stingray Rob is my name. Rob is with 2 B's, but I'm on all social medias at Stingray Rob, and I think Twitter's at Stings_Ray_Rob. And then if you want to watch the racing, it's the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires on Peacock TV app. And so I think our schedule is online, and you can watch live on the app. Peacock's got great coverage. So that's the best way you can follow the racing. And then if you want to follow me, Instagram, Facebook, those are probably the 2 best options. There you go.
And I only have one request as we wrap this up. And when you win the Indy 500, we'll have another conversation. You won't forget about Dan, the road trip guy, okay?
I like it. That sounds good.
Yeah.
I appreciate road trips, I think, as much as you do. And that might be saying something, but yeah, I think windshield time is where you get to know someone. And so use it wisely and do it often.
Hey, I wish you all the best the rest of the season. We'll be watching you. You're solid in second place, and but I think next year I can't wait. I can't wait to see you in a big IndyCar.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Dan the Road Trip Guy, and we look forward to having you back again next time. In the meantime, if you want to find me, you can find me on the internet at Danny, D-A-N-N-Y, Neal, Neal.com. Until we meet up again, keep having conversations and keep driving.